Hi, this is Michael David Cobb Bowen for Cobb Vision, and today I am responding to a couple guys who are saying three candidates, one name, or one word, racism. And first of all, I wanted to just be excited about getting into some of the video debates or video back and forth on YouTube. It's really an interesting thing, and I'm probably going to do a lot more of that. It seems like a lot of fun. And since I have a little extra time on my hands these days, I will do the same. One of the things I wanted to say is, first of all, is that the first guy, Lovaka, I think, I forget his real name, from Ohio, was spending a lot of time talking about what Hannity and the mainstream media might do, and Fox News, and also I think the guy Corey Allen, who responded, also were talking about that. And it's going to be very difficult right now for young folks, I think, to get through all of the media that we have. There was one interesting thing that a guy I listened to named Dan Carlin said the other day, and he said, you have to understand that we are in a media explosion. And if you look at, he was talking about the war on terror, and the quick story is that if you live in the Middle East and you are getting American news and media for the first time, it would be no wonder that you would think that we're all crazy over here, or that you might want to go to war against us. If you could imagine back in the 50s what Americans were watching, Leave It to Beaver or Dennis the Menace, or any of those old shows, the Ed Sullivan Show, and if they were transported right into 2007, 2008, and then they saw rap videos and MTV and you know, The Flavor of Love, or any of these crazy reality shows, they would be freaked out too. And it is because we have 500 channels. We have XM radio, we have YouTube, we have the internet, we have all the mainstream media, we have all the talk radio. We have so many media choices out there that there is perversion and danger, and very little of it is truth. And so you have to be able, and it's difficult for young folks, and it's difficult for everybody, to be able to very selectively pick where you're going to get your information and how you can find the truth. And quite frankly, I think it's getting to the point where you really need to have some college education just in order to understand what is real, what people actually can bank on in terms of what makes sense in this world. Because if you get into just listening to the media, you're never really going to get through it. You're going to be searching for a very long time to try to find out what you really need to know. And the interesting thing is that college professors and people who are older can help you get through that. And that's kind of what I want to assign that role to myself a little bit in terms of doing my YouTube stuff, because I spend a lot of time excuse me, looking at a lot of things. It also helps excuse me, to read some books and then find out what books other people have read, because when it comes down to it, when you talk about people who are committed to the truth, then you have to think about your own commitment to the truth. That is to say, if you think that you're being lied to, and it becomes obvious when you look at people on TV, then you have to recognize how easy it is to put a camera in front of yourself, stand in front of the camera, and read something that somebody else wrote, or follow somebody else's agenda. If you really cared about something, then you might write it down in your diary. And if you really cared about your diary enough, then you might go in front of some people and read your diary. And if you got that much confidence, then you might go and speak at a public engagement, okay? Or you might publish a blog on the internet, and you might write essays all the time. And what I'm saying is there's a hierarchy in terms of people's commitment to the truth, in terms of the amount of effort that they put into it. And that's what you have to think about anytime you go into a bookstore, because every book on every shelf is at least a year out of somebody's life where they're telling you as best they can what they really mean. And you have to understand and make sure that you are dedicated to finding out the truth and following out where the facts lead you, because the truth doesn't serve people. If we're lucky, people serve the truth, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to take years because it's just that deep. So when we talk about the three candidates and racism, it has not really been a subject. It has been something that's been tossed around, but it's not the material substance of, it's not the substance of the debate. Nobody is particularly saying anything racist in the campaign. They're just saying, well, will America be racist when it comes to voting? And that's about as deep as it's gotten, because nobody's really done anything. And it's easy to say, well, did somebody go to jail? Did somebody die? Was somebody injured? How many lives were involved in this? So it's very easy to say, well, this is racism, but you got to quantify it. You got to say, well, how deep is it? Who died? And if nobody died, then you're just talking, it's just chat. And you really have to say, if you're going to make that accusation, because there's obviously many different levels, then you have to really say, does this person really firmly believe that somebody should die because of their racial beliefs? And when you get to that level, that's when it becomes fairly serious. And even though Ron Paul was hanging around some shady characters who wrote some pretty shady things, it's very obvious that neo-Confederates, the people who still are mad at losing the Civil War and want to bring back their Confederate war flag, those are the kinds of people that Ron Paul was hanging out with. And they wrote they wrote the articles that were of concern. Yeah, that's kind of shady and that's kind of dicey, but it doesn't necessarily reflect on Ron Paul's personal beliefs. It just means he hangs out with some shady characters, and that's something you actually don't want, and it's a legitimate concern. But there are other issues with Ron Paul besides that, and that's the biggest actual racist beliefs that have gotten into the campaign. Now you can talk about whether people are offended by certain phrases. Somebody calls you a name, are you going to get all huffy about it? Well, I never heard anything like that before. You can do that, but that's not the that should not be the substance of your vote. You shouldn't vote for somebody for president, the most powerful office in the world, based on whether or not you feel comfortable around them, or you think that they're insulting, or you don't like their personality. I mean, if you like personality, then you can go play on American Idol, and you can make those kind of decisions as a pop consumer. But this is about what kind of decisions the person in that office is going to make when they're in office, and they have broad powers, and you need to come and understand those powers and understand how they're going to use those powers. And there are no candidates who are even coming close to doing something where the policy that goes through, let's say as the president, they put forth a bill that's going to be presented to Congress, and they say, I want to champion this bill. There are no bills that are ever going to get through the United States Congress which does more for one race than for another race. And you can, and that's part of the whole, mind game that's being played on here, because people get the impression that, well, we have to have this message for African Americans, we have to have this message for Latino Americans, we have to have this message for white Americans. And in fact, when it comes to the law, you may put your race on your driver's license, but everybody takes the same test, and everybody has to obey the same law. And whether you are treated differently from the law is not written in the law itself. Okay? And nobody's trying to change the law, and nobody's trying to pass new laws so that there are different standards for Americans by race. And that's where racism gets deep, and that's where it costs people their lives. But just being insulted, by a bigotry, then, that's not at the level that we're talking about. That's stuff that happens in the schoolyard and in some, small backwater towns still in America. But that's not what's happening at the national level. So I just wanted to wrap that up to just give you a little perspective about, number one, how far you have to go to get to the truth, and your own responsibility in looking for the truth that's nuanced. And if you're going to be a sophisticated consumer, and if you're going to deal with that truth, then you have to go the whole 9 yards. And you can't really expect to get that from televised broadcasts. You got to get that from reading online newspapers, from reading serious blogs, from reading serious books, from having serious discussions with serious people, because it gets that deep. You can't just walk into these things any more than you can walk into the NFL and automatically understand, which coach is the best coach or which player is the best player. You need to write that stuff down and do some analysis on it. Secondly, from the standpoint of racism, you have to get down that deep into it and find out what kind of laws are being written, and said, if this is one law for white folks and one law for black folks, then you have a serious problem. But guess what? We took care of that problem in the civil rights movement. The closest parallel to that right now is illegal immigration, which is saying, if you go into the DMV and you're a Mexican illegal immigrant, then you don't have to show your papers, and people are thinking about giving you a driver's license. But everybody in the United States as a citizen has to show that they're 16 years old with their birth certificate. That's a real double standard that is happening on a real issue, where people are trying to change the law and say there's two standards for one race of people and for another race of people. But it's not by race, it's by immigration status. So you have to be very clear about that stuff, about where the law makes the distinction, besides not just where people think the law makes distinctions. You have to understand the law. You have to be able to read the law. You have to be able to see the law. Anyway, that is my little rant for today, and I hope this is helpful. And of course, you can always look at my other videos and come to my website, where I've been writing for years. 6,500 essays. Oh my God. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Peace. Thanks for listening.